The Archdiocese of Chicago is a vibrant and diverse faith community. We celebrate our faith through worship, evangelization, and reaching out to the needy. Welcome to Catholic Chicago.
Hello and welcome to Beyond the Headlines. My name is Joyce Duriga. I'm editor of the Chicao Catholic, the newspaper for the Archdiocese of Chicago. And this is where we take a closer look behind the, talking to the people who are making the news that we're covering in every issue. So today we have as our guest Bob Gilligan. He's Executive Director of the Catholic Conference of Illinois. And he's here to talk about Senate Bill 3499, which was introduced in the Illinois General Assembly, which would make it legal for physicians or advanced practice nurses to prescribe powerful drugs to a person diagnosed with a terminal illness who wants to end their life. So essentially it's euthanasia, assisted suicide. So let's delve into this. Hey, Bob, thanks for coming.
Good to be here.
So can you tell people about this? What is it and where's it going?
Sure. So as you indicated, Senate Bill 3499 was introduced recently. The legislation would allow for physician-assisted suicide in the state of Illinois. And what that means is that for somebody who has been diagnosed with a terminal disease with a life expectancy of less than 6 months, could go to their physician, a doctor, and ask for approval of lethal drugs sufficient enough to end their life. If that request was approved and they obtained a secondary approval from a consulting physician, and the doctor felt there was no reason to refer for mental health issues, then the requesting person could be made eligible. And therefore, after that, those drugs could be either mailed to the person's home, or they would pick those lethal drugs to be ingested to a pharmacist, and they can pick up at a pharmacy. That's in a nutshell what the bill does. This is legal now in about 10 states. Not all of it have passed through the legislative process. Some have done it through the judicial process, but it's legal in about 10 states. And I should add that some people hear that and they get a little discouraged. They think, oh, it's legal in 10 states. It's going to happen in Illinois. Of course, everything happens in Illinois. They kind of think they can't fight back. But I should point out that it's not legal in 40 states. And Compassionate Choice is the main advocacy behind this proposal. They have spent a fortune since the late 90s trying to enact these laws in states where you would think they would pass automatically: Minnesota, Connecticut, Massachusetts. They still haven't passed. Compassionate Choices needs a win, which is why they're introducing the bill in Illinois. So our obligation is to espouse those reasons why it should not pass. And I think if we do our job well, I think we have a real decent chance of stopping this legislation.
So tell people why it matters to the church, what the church thinks about assisted suicide and why that matters.
Sure. We have some reasons, obviously, according to our church teachings, on why we would oppose this. And then we have a whole list of reasons that, we put into the secular culture based on our faith. Let me talk about the first ones first and why the church believes this is wrong. Well, it's simple that our lives don't belong to ourselves. We are a gift from God, and we don't have the authority or the ability to take our own lives. Our lives are a gift. And so our church teaches that ending life prematurely through suicide is actually a sin. And more than that, it doesn't acknowledge the full power of God's teachings and what our church faith says about it. That's the theology behind it, if you will. But when I'm in Springfield, what I explain to lawmakers is that our faith informs everything we do. It informs who we are, what we say, what we believe. And there are a lot of reasons why this is bad public policy for the state of Illinois. And I launch into then a number of reasons why it's bad for the state of Illinois.
Why is it bad? Because that's a good argument for us to understand, so that
sure.
Yeah. If we're dialoguing.
Let me start it this way. I think there's three major reasons, if you will. I'll break them down in sort of major categories. The first, coercion. The second, the role of insurance companies. And third, slippery slope argument. And I'll even go one more and say there's actually a fourth. It's called a suicide contagion. So the first reason is coercion. As I explained to you earlier, that the drugs get sent to a person in their home. The doctor's role ends once the person is approved for the drugs. No more doctor involved in this decision. So therefore, this person has now lethal drugs sufficient to kill themselves. What if that person changes their mind? What if there are people in the home who are now coercing that individual to do something that maybe they thought they wanted to do originally, but now they've changed their mind? Now that person's running around in their home with drugs sufficient to kill themselves. There's no person out there that could act as a third-party validator to make sure that this is being done properly. Coercion is the first reason. Secondly, I should say, in the process of ingesting those pills, that there are reasons now that we now know that some people don't exactly experience a peaceful death.
Right.
Sometimes there's vomiting, there's reactions to the drugs, and it can take quite a long period of time. People's experiences vary. So coercion is the first reason. The second reason is the role of insurance companies. I know that everybody watching or listening to this can understand that insurance companies play a disproportionate role on what healthcare individuals receive. We've all experienced denials from our insurance companies for treatments that we've requested. There are doctors out there are people out there who have actually been under the treatment of a physician. The physician has sought additional treatments to be paid for by the insurance company or the Medicaid agency in various states. And what they've been told is this: well, those treatments are X, Y, and Z, whatever the condition was. But have you considered this end of life option,
Wow.
prescribing pills sufficient to kill another person? The cost benefit, if you think about this from an insurance company's perspective, is significant.
Right.
It's a lot cheaper to prescribe those drugs to end one's life as opposed to treatments, which could cost, as we all know, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. Insurance company role in healthcare is very important. Also, I'd like to call attention to the poor and the marginalized often have insufficient healthcare coverages. So they're more vulnerable here than probably those of us who have decent insurance coverage. Also, the disability community is terrified of this.
Yeah.
They know already that disabled people do not get the same healthcare treatments just because of who they are and maybe the way they look. So the disabled community and the poor are very, very concerned about this and strongly oppose this bill. That's the insurance company reason. The third reason is the slippery slope argument. I can assure you, because this has been the experience in many other states, that when this bill passes, what I said earlier about drugs to be ingested, it's going to be a very short period of time before the advocates of this will come back and say, we don't want to have intravenous, we don't want to have those drugs ingested. People should be allowed to do this intravenously. They want to change that. Slippery slope, number one. Number two, there's now a residency requirement that somebody has to be a resident of the state of Illinois. They're going to eliminate that. They've tried to do that in many other states. We need people to be able to come to Illinois in order to end their lives, is what we're going to hear. The other thing, as I mentioned before, that this bill currently requires there be a diagnosis of a terminal disease. How much longer do you think it's going to be before that requirement is lifted? Life expectancy, 6 months or less. In California right now, there's legislation to increase that 6 months to 18 months. And the other thing that's quite terrifying of the slippery slope is, as I said, they're going to lift the requirement that there be a terminal diagnosis. And in California today, there was legislation introduced that would allow somebody who's got mid to more severe case of dementia the ability to end one's life. In Canada, I would strongly urge anybody watching this or listening to this, look at what's going on in Canada today. Canada today, there are people who are depressed or homeless. They've given up on life. They want to end their lives. 3.3% of all deaths in Canada are euthanasia. They have euthanasia now. There's assisted suicide. So my point is, once you put this on the table as an option for end-of-life care, that is a very slippery slope. And unfortunately, I think it leads to a situation where killing has become the solution to alleviate pain. With regard to pain and suffering, in Oregon, they asked people, well, why do you want to do this to end your life? What is causing you to want to get the lethal drugs to end your life? It's interesting to note that The top three reasons, the first reason was loss of autonomy. The second reason was they can't participate in the daily activities of daily life that they once did. And the third reason was they feel that they're a burden on their family and friends. None of those are sufficient reasons to end one's life. That's a societal failure or a family failure. We can address that. Finally, pain and suffering was the fifth most frequent response. And I think it's important to address pain and suffering. Many people are going to come forward and say, I don't want to suffer at the end of life. We, unfortunately, many of us know people who have suffered at the end of life. But we're being told today that due to modern technology and advances in medicine through palliative care, that it is not necessary that somebody has to suffer pain at the end of life. We have the ability today to make sure people do not have pain at the end of life. Now, unfortunately, that doesn't always happen. So our proposal to the people who are putting this, our alternative solution to the people who are putting this bill forward is to say, look, what we need to do is we need to expand palliative care and provide more resources for it. That would address the reason why many people fear pain at the end of life. The other reasons I gave, I think, are definitely solvable through more social services, more family interventions, that sort of thing. So I think there's a lot of strong arguments against this. And the thing that I've been telling, a very effective argument with many lawmakers has been this final one, the fourth one, which is a suicide contagion. In states where this is passed, there is now scientific social study research that indicates not only is the level of assisted suicide increased, but so does non-assisted suicide. Those suicides that have nothing to do with the definition I just gave you. So what we've been trying to point out to lawmakers is, look, we know the people that come before you have very sympathetic cases. We understand that. Of course they do. They're very emotional. But you need to think about this. For every person that avails themselves of assisted suicide in other states, how many other people are committing suicide who would not have done it? You may know that the statistics on suicide are staggering.
Right.
There's about 50,000 suicides a year in this country. The state of Illinois just acted a 988 hotline. So if people are feeling depressed, they're feeling lonely, they have a place to go. There's a ton of money now being spent on mental health, so people don't do that. And here we are going to make it legal. And we all know what happens when the state makes something legal, you always get more of it. And so we think these are strong arguments. And when we have the chance to present them in a environment that's not, that people can concentrate and focus on this, I think lawmakers are taking a little bit of pause and they're saying, yeah, maybe we need to think about this. I think that's what's going on in the mind of many lawmakers today. I think there's a tendency to want to support this because they want to help these people who are coming to them and who fear pain. But on the other hand, they need to think about that personal decision has societal consequences. And that's what we're trying to point out.
All right, we're going to take a quick break and we'll come back and talk some more about assisted suicide in Illinois. Don't go away.
People always say, how can you spend your day with 3-year-olds? Seeing the changes that they go through and just the journey and how they grow, this is a very rewarding job. Even though at the end of the day, we're not the highest paid people on earth. And when I have a parent contact me and say, my child loves school, that to me, I'm setting that foundation for their love of learning. Because really, you are changing lives, you are molding lives.
Shape the next generation of leaders. Teach. Apply today at archchicago.org/schooljobs.
Catholic Charities' Loss Program was created more than 40 years ago to help survivors of suicide wherever they are in the grieving process. This nationally recognized program continues to offer a safe, non-judgmental environment where survivors of suicide can find community, direction, and resources for healing after suffering the devastating loss of a loved one. Online and in-person services are available for individuals, couples, children, and families of all faith traditions. To learn more, call 312-655-7283 or email loss@catholiccharities.net. Don't suffer alone. We are here to offer loving outreach to survivors of suicide. Contact Catholic Charities today.
I am a seminarian.
The church needs compassionate and well-trained priests to help guide each of us through life.
What inspires me, what draws me always to the priesthood is continue to see priests be a beacon of hope for other people.
You can play a part in the education of these young men as they prepare for a life of service to others.
I want to be that beacon of hope too, and it sets my heart on fire.
To support our seminarians, make your gift at archchicago.org/seminarian fund or call 312-534-7959.
Welcome back to Beyond the Headlines. My name is Joyce Duriga, and before we get back to our guests, I just want to plug the newspaper. Check us out at ChicagoCatholic.com, and you can subscribe to our free e-newsletter that I send out about 3 times a week. You can follow us on social media, or you can subscribe to the paper. We come out about every 2 weeks, and it's $30 for a year. You'll find out what Cardinal Cupich is writing about, what the Pope's up to. In this latest issue, we'll have a story on the topic that we're talking about today. We'll also have our coverage of Holy Week, lots of stuff going on there. And we did a fun thing, recently covered a St. Joseph's Day at Our Lady of Mount Carmel in Melrose Park. They had a huge table, like elaborate. They had a donkey in a procession and just a lot of fun stuff. So check us out at ChicagoCatholic.com. So today we're talking to Bob Gilligan, who's the Executive Director of the Catholic Conference of Illinois, about Senate Bill 3499, which is introducing assisted suicide to the state of Illinois. Bob, some of the things, that when you were talking, it resonates with me about the abortion pill being readily available now in stores. I was just reading a headline this morning about, Amazon's going to carry it, Walmart's going to carry it, and then, what happens if it goes wrong? What happens if the woman has an adverse reaction or can't stop bleeding? And then I think about, what would happen if, like you said, what if they decide they don't want to do it? Maybe the pain is too much to kill themselves. Maybe there's just that whole thing. And then the less burdensome part, it seems like it just becomes like a societal thing where we don't value life. We don't value our elderly. We don't value, and like you said, anybody with disabilities. It's just like a culture.
Yeah, it is. And this is one of those topics that, when I think there's such, as I said earlier, there's such an emotional appeal to people who are in pain. Nobody wants to see somebody in pain. Nobody wants to have a loved one be in pain. We can all relate to that. That, by the way, is going back to the first question you asked me, what are the differences between, our teachings about pain and suffering versus what we do here at the Catholic Conference in our arguments. But, one of the things that, like I said, the appeal is to help those people who are coming to them and with, they're afraid. They don't want to suffer pain. But as I said, you have to think about the consequences of doing that and the consequences to other people who are vulnerable. And the disabled community and those people who are marginalized and poor are very concerned about this. And the Access Living, the Centers for Independent Progress are 2 organizations in Illinois that have been with us taking the lead, quite frankly, on many of the advocacy initiatives we've had. And they've been the face of this issue. And they will be, because they know, as I said, they know there are studies that indicate how, like, a well person like myself would go in and be treated by a medical professional compared to somebody who's in a wheelchair. It's just something they live with, and they know they're vulnerable, and that's why they're very scared about this legislation. And like you said, it that does pretty much just devalue life.
I forgot to tell folks who are listening or watching that if you don't know, the Catholic Conference of Illinois advocates for all the dioceses are members of it in the state, and all the bishops are members, and they advocate for the church's position on policy matters in Springfield. So they do a lot of good work. What's the website, Bob? Illinois.
www.ilcatholic.org. And as you can see on the screen, there's that's I think what they call the landing page of the website. And if you scroll up a little bit, we have a whole section that's dedicated to this topic. It's called A Better Way Forward for Illinois. And the reason it's called A Better Way Forward for Illinois, Help Stop Assisted Suicide, is that the bishops in the state, all 6 bishops, are going to be sending a letter to pastors and to the Catholic laity sometime in the month of April, basically going over some of the things I've been talking about and trying to articulate some of the concerns the church has about this issue. And as I said earlier, putting forth a better way forward. A better way forward for somebody who fears pain is not to allow them to end their life. A better way forward is to provide them palliative care if they're at the end of life, or provide those sort of services that stabilize them so they don't feel that they have to end their life, and they can lead more productive, or at least more secure life at the end of their time here on earth.
Now, when you tell people what palliative care is, I think we don't always understand that.
Yeah, and I'm by far an expert on it, Joyce, but palliative care is a relatively new, I'm not sure if you would refer to it as a branch of medicine, but a new study of medicine. And what it does is it attempts to provide comfort care at the end of life. It's more than just trying to cure, like medicine tries to cure an illness, right? Well, palliative care may not be able to cure your illness because there might be a terminal diagnosis there, but it provides sort of spiritual, more counseling, affirmative care, and medical as well. So people at the end of their life can, like I said, they don't have to experience pain, and they can get through their end times here in a way that's dignified and respectful, and also not put, perhaps also, as I said, addressing some of those situations that people feel they're a burden on their family. Perhaps they can provide some kind of comfort to them that they normally wouldn't get just in a hospital setting or in social service agency. And I should add that Catholic hospitals in particular are very good at this. Rainbow Hospice, that's provided by Ascension, is one of the leaders in the field. And there are a lot of good palliative care places out there. But like I said, we need more of them. And they need more resources to do what they do, because let's face it, the baby boomers are getting older, and that demographic is going to need these types of services more and more so every day.
And it's really, as we're talking, it just keeps coming back to me that this is really a pro-life issue. This is the dignity of life. Like, we're all made in the human image and likeness of God, and there's, like, to me, not, besides abortion, there's no plainer way that when you're choosing to end your own life, it's like we're devaluing life, and it'll just keep spreading.
Yeah, the Office of Human Dignity and Solidarity is they protect life from conception to natural death. This is the natural death part.
So you've got a whole packet that you sent me that you're going to send out to parishes. What can parishes do to advocate on this?
Yeah, they can. I think this is an interesting topic, because I think a lot of the things I'm talking about people do not know. So there's an educational component here. You talked about abortion before. I think it's been 50 years, and I think everybody understands abortion, what it is not, from our perspective. But this is something I think that people need to take a little bit of time and educate themselves about the arguments that I'm putting forth here, about what happens at end of life. The Catholic Conference a couple of years ago put out advanced directives. I think this is something that, as a society, as we all age, and as our parents are getting older and older and living longer and longer, we need to have these types of conversations. So there's a huge educational component about end of life and what that means with regard to advance directives, and also the arguments I'm talking about here to oppose assisted suicide. So getting up to speed sort of on the arguments and what's going on with the topic writ large is the first thing. And secondly, as we always do, is we ask people to call their lawmakers, meet with them if they're comfortable with doing so, getting involved in the political process to the degree that they can. We provide, if you want, you can just go on our website, the ICANN, the Illinois Catholic Advocacy Network, and you can use that to send a quick message to your lawmaker about the reasons why they should oppose this. But really, what we'd like is people to be educated and comfortable, so when they could talk to a lawmaker or their neighbor or something like that and help. Because we have a strong, I think what we have here on this topic is not only do we have an advocacy component, but we have an educational opportunity about end of life issues.
And it might not come up like as a hearing or soon, but it's still important that people do something now, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I would say that once pastors start talking about this, and hopefully they will, and the bulletin insert appears, that they do something, that they call their lawmaker. The legislative calendar is persnickety. Who knows what's going to happen when? I don't anticipate any public hearing on this bill before April 8th. After that, we really don't know. This could be an issue, quite frankly. Joyce, we may be talking about this for a while. We may be talking about this for a couple of years. Massachusetts has had this issue for over 10 years that they've been fighting it. Connecticut's in the same boat. So this might be something that is going to be around for a while. But so the sooner that people are educated and understand the church's position on end-of-life issues and are comfortable with it, the better off we'll all be. Not only for the legislation per se, of course, that's important, but I think as Catholics, we should be more in tune to these end-of-life issues because they're challenging for everybody. Everybody's going to go through it, like it or not.
Amen to that. Well, folks who are listening and watching, I encourage you to go to ilcatholic.org, sign up for the ICANN, follow them on social media. They're doing great work. They've always been doing great work. It's important stuff that folks in the pew don't always consider that we need to do, or even know that we have advocates in our down there for our church and our teaching. And then again, just go to ChicagoCatholic.com, check us out, sign up for a subscription. You can do that online. You can sign up for our free newsletter, and you'll follow us, and you'll see stuff like this story, that what Bob's doing, and all his resources and his networks of people across the state are doing to get this issue out there. And Bob, I know it's a busy day for you, so I thank you so much for making the time.
You're welcome, Joyce. Glad to do it. Always happy to appear on such a fine what is this, a webcast?
Yeah,
I don't even know what these things
podcast.
are called anymore.
With the illustrious producers in the background and all that. So, all right. Well, all right. Until next time, everyone. We'll see you later. Have a good one. Bye, Bob.
Thank you.